I spent most of my 20s thinking I had life figured out. Now, I will tell you this, that growing older is a humbling experience, to say the least. I recently turned 32, and I feel like in the last 2 years, I've learned more and deeper lessons than I ever did in my life before that. So I wanted to share with you 13 things I wish I knew before 30. Stop caring about other people's opinions. I don't just mean other people's bad or negative opinions about you. I literally mean any opinion. That even includes the positive opinions. That's not to say that it doesn't feel nice to receive a compliment, but what I mean by that is that you should not be seeking validation from external sources. So when someone says something nice about you, that's nice to hear, but truly deep down inside, you already knew. On the flip side of that, when someone has a negative opinion of you, you can apply the same confidence towards them. You understand your own worth and you won't feel any need to try and prove them wrong. Stop setting unrealistic standards. This is for all my workaholics out there. You cannot work really hard and then also have an amazing bubbly social life, also have an incredibly clean house, cook from scratch every single day, and then have plenty of time for all of your hobbies. It's simply impossible. The best thing to do is find out what your priorities are. So in my case, actually, I am a bit of a workaholic and I really like working a lot and being and feeling productive. And then I feel terrible when my house is a mess. But I realized that, hey, my house is a mess because I have other priorities. Now, whenever I see the mess around me, it's a reminder for me that because of this mess, it allows me to work on my hobbies, to have some more time for friends. Sometimes the mess gets so intense that I'm tired of it and I will clean it. And that's good because at that moment, cleaning my house is a priority. Don't beat yourself up for not being able to do everything because you cannot do everything. Be careful of cognitive bias. You've probably heard of the experiment about whether the glass is half empty or half full. You may be an optimist and look at the glass and see it half full. Maybe there's someone else out there and they've experienced a lot of poverty in their life. Maybe they weren't always able to pay for their bills and so their water and their electricity would be shut off. So to them, seeing a glass of water filled halfway might cause a lot of stress and anxiety, and they may see the glass half empty. Everyone's perception is different. It's all based on their own fears, their own experiences, their own insecurities. So cognitive bias is assuming that everyone thinks like you, and you could get into a lot of trouble like that. Let's say you have really good and positive intentions. That doesn't always mean that everyone has positive intentions and your best interest at heart. Some people actually love to see you suffer in order to feel better about themselves. Treat yourself as if you were your own cute little fluffy pet. This kind of goes hand in hand with the don't set unrealistic standards. I've struggled a lot with feeling guilty about not being productive. I feel like if I'm not actually actively doing or creating something, then I'm useless and unworthy. Of course, that is not the case, because if I look at my pets and I'm trying to train them, their little brains get tired and they need to take a break and process things. Sometimes their body gets tired and they need to take a nap. So once I kind of started looking at that and thinking, wait, why am I treating my cats that way but not myself that way? Then it started to kind of click in my head and I was like, oh yeah, I have kind of like this battery and sometimes it's empty and I need to relax and then it will fill back up again. And then once my battery is full, I can be super productive and make and create amazing things. And in my downtime, not being conventionally productive is actually productive. You don't have to have everything figured out in order to communicate. I spent a long time being a people pleaser. It was always very important for me that everyone around me was in a good mood always at all times. So therefore, I was afraid of confrontation. Whenever someone would do or say something that would bother me, I would just take it in and tell myself, I will think about this. I would go home and think about it and overanalyze it. I realized that these are all just excuses that I'm making for myself in order to not have to confront someone and have an uncomfortable situation. The problem in that is that it creates a lot of resentment. So I'm trying to keep the peace at the expense of myself, and therefore I started setting expectations for people that they can never live up to because I never actually communicated that to them. I will say there's a bit of a balance because sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm not even going to communicate that because that's just basic human decency. But overall, after really going inwards and exploring my own fears and insecurities around that, I realized that it can't be wrong to communicate, because if someone doesn't actually like that you set your boundaries or say something that bothered you and they're not willing to figure it out together with you, then they are probably not a person that you should have in your life anyway. The spotlight effect is real. People always overestimate how many other people are looking at them. What you do and what you wear in public mostly goes unnoticed. Even if someone does think about it, they will stop thinking about it the moment that they pass you. People simply do not think as much about you as you think about you. And that could be a harsh truth, but it also comes with a lot of relief. It's so humbling to know that you're really not as important as you think you are, but at the same time, how cool is that? If you really fully understand that concept, it gives you an incredible amount of freedom. So just do whatever you want to do and you'll be fine. Nobody has everything figured out. I've always really looked up to monks because especially in this modern world with all its luxuries, there are people who decide to go live in the mountains and pray and meditate every day. And I think that's impressive because we live in an age where it's so easy to get distracted. But then I heard a story of an elderly monk who was talking to another monk and he was crying because he realized he hadn't faced himself in all these years. He felt like he wasted his time by distracting himself because he was just too afraid to really fully go inward and face his own shadows and insecurities. So even a monk who spends years meditating and praying and looking inward still has lessons to learn. I think the best thing to realize is that others don't always have the answers. You gotta keep your own eyes and your own instincts open. No one's going to save you. No one's going to hold your hand through life. And that's okay, because it's the same for everyone. Let your trust be earned, not broken. Man, this was a tough one to learn. For me, going on to the cognitive bias, I really assumed that everyone in my life was trustworthy. You can put people to the test and let them prove themselves to you, because the ones who are not worthy of your trust are the ones who will break it. So don't ever give your trust away freely. Consuming mindless content makes you miserable. I know, I said to give yourself playtime, and I still stand by that, but still be mindful of what you're consuming. So obviously there's a balance here. Yes, I spent a long time feeling guilty about resting and not doing anything, but I also would notice that after consuming certain kind of mindless content, I would feel empty. So pay attention to how you really feel after you consume your content. You are, after all, a human. You're a creative, curious creature, and your soul craves growth, improvement, and wisdom. That's not to say you have to scrap everything out, but again, just try to really be mindful of how you feel after consuming a certain type of content. And if you end up feeling kind of empty or not so good about yourself, then maybe it's time to replace that. So you can replace series with documentaries. You can train your TikTok algorithm to give you tips and knowledge and history lessons or whatever. There's so much good content out there. It's incredible. On any other platform, just unfollow accounts that you don't like and try to find accounts that leave you feeling inspired. Just do it. Getting overwhelmed is totally and completely normal. But no matter how much you sit on something, nothing will actually start happening until you take action. Just start doing the simplest, littlest, stupidest thing, especially when it comes to projects that are huge and overwhelming, but you are excited about it. Just hold on to that excitement and start going for it. Because once you start doing it, that's actually when you will learn the most. And it's very important for you to start taking action on the things that you really want to do. And taking little steps is always the best way to feeling less overwhelmed, even when it feels like initially it will do nothing. Love is not what you think it is. When people think about love, they tend to associate it with all the positive sides. So the happiness, the light, the giving, and all the fun stuff. But love can also be dark, difficult, and painful. The positive love is just one side of the coin, because if you didn't know love, for example, you would never feel grief. Truly loving someone also means cutting through what's sometimes deemed as the negative or the discomfort. Maybe someone won't talk to you anymore when you've stated your boundaries, but you keeping your boundaries is an act of love towards them. Letting them cross your boundaries is not good for them, it's unhelpful, and it's also not good for you. By allowing it and letting people just do to you whatever because you're so wanting to be positive and light and giving, it doesn't actually help anyone get better. Love is fully wanting other people and yourself to be the best version that they can be. Sit with your discomfort. Pain and discomfort is definitely something that we all try to run away from, which is fully understandable because they are not fun feelings to feel. However, they are very important to fully experience and live, because growth doesn't come from just happy fairy tale rainbows. Growth comes from the messy and the painful. Your ego is the part of you that just tries to keep you alive and going, and everything that is not necessary to not keep you alive just go away. But your soul actually craves growth and improvement. If you don't sit through the emptiness and the discomfort of your ego, and if you just kind of let your fears be your fears instead of trying to face them, then you will stay stuck and you'll always have just this kind of emptiness feeling in your heart. It is on the other side of the mud where the improved parts of you lie. There is no way to go around it. You have to go through it. So take your time to feel the pain, to reflect on your discomfort, on your fears, on your insecurities, because only when you start to give yourself empathy, and when you start to give yourself love for the muddy parts of you, for the shadow parts of you, that's when you will be able to shine a light on it. And they are a part of you. So you rejecting them doesn't make it not a part of you. It just makes you not accept a part of yourself, and that's not self-love. Everything starts with you. You are one person out of billions in the world, and you have zero control over anyone else's thoughts or actions except for your own. You are solely responsible for you, and that's a good thing. You can be everything that you want to be. You can do anything that you want to do as long as you don't harm anyone, and not one opinion from any other person can physically stop you from doing that, except when you allow it to. You actually have the freedom to decide to not let things bother you and just go your own way. At the same time, of course, you're also responsible for your own growth, for your own reflection, for your own improvements. Being responsible for only yourself comes with a lot of freedom, but of course also with a lot of responsibility. Thankfully, everyone else is just responsible for themselves, so you just work on you. And for becoming the complex and authentic human that you are, you cannot be blaming the world, because everything starts with you.